Hey, and welcome to the Creative Coffee Break. My name is Werner Puchert, and as I always say, I believe that most of the world's problems are just interesting challenges in disguise. And if you followed my journey at all, you will know that I'm a complete geek when it comes to anything design tool related, because I feel that why should we not use experiential tools to create experiential things, right? So, and in today's show, I've got two guests, what I'm really excited about, and I'm going to be trying to control the show as best as I can. And the reason that I have two guests, and I'm going to introduce them in a second, is that we have a shared interest in a game called BossUP. I have a review of this going live next week, but then also a great friend of mine actually said, hey, I know the creator, and we roped him into a conversation to explore this, but not just because she knows the creator, is that it's something really interesting. And the reason I brought this in is that in my time as working with customers, something that I always noticed, and this is actually also true for my time in advertising, is that you have to be able to sell your own idea, and selling is sometimes seen as a bad thing. I always have this anecdote where I share where I worked with a lot of customers. We had a customer co-creation forum, and we brought a lot of our professionals together with customers, and we did things together. And one thing that always, what I always saw is that some of these professionals and really, really talented people in themselves always had a problem explaining what it is that they're actually doing. Like kind of transferring the idea, getting customers to buy in. And I think BossUP is something that kind of trains that, but in a broader way. But let me stop rambling on, because I will be talking for hours, and I'm going to bring up the two guests, Bassam Jabry and Itziar Pobes. Thank you so much for joining me in the show. I think let me kick off by trying to be very professional and doing a quick introduction of my two guests. So Itziar, you're up first. Itziar is a service design and customer journey practitioner. She's developed and led a lot of education and training around service design management. She also has a background spanning service design, design thinking, and participatory practice. That's a hard word for a South African guy to say. She holds an MBA in service innovation and design, and has taught internationally at institutions including BAU, Design College, Politecnico di Milano, that's a mouthful, and IED. She's currently pioneering the world's first advanced customer journey management course, which I am very excited about. I hope you're going to be able to tell us a little bit more. And also, I have to add that Itziar is also my son's favorite, in air quotes, auntie when she comes to visit. Itziar, thank you for joining. Have I done you justice there?
I think you've done over justice. I don't know that the course that, by the way, is just started this week.
Great.
It's pioneering, but it is the first customer journey management advanced course in the Service Design College, and it's the first edition. So we are really excited about it.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. And then we have someone between us who we roped into the conversation, is Bassam Jabry. He's a managing director at Chemistry, experience design consultancy, with over 2 decades. I'm suspecting that 2 decades is too little. You probably have more experience, and has worked across product, service, and systems design, from healthcare and microsystems in emerging markets to innovation and engagement projects with organizations such as Visa, Dell, Singtel, and public sector bodies. Originally trained as an industrial designer. This is something, when I snooped you a little bit, Bassam, that I was really curious about, but it also makes sense that we have this in our hands, right? Bassam combines product thinking with experience in systems design. He holds a first-class honors degree in industrial design from Brunel University, and executive training in circular economy, which hopefully we're going to be touching on as well, and sustainability from Cambridge Judge Business School. Bassam, thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation. Have I missed anything in your very broad background?
Thanks, Werner. Thanks, great to be here and with you and Itziar as well. So no, I think you captured it very well as well. So yeah, you're probably right about the 20 years, but I stopped adding years after I think the first 10. I think when I applied for my first job at Philips, my manager at the time pointed out how I kind of had added on a few extra years of experience, which I probably didn't have at the time, just to sort of, try and give myself the best chance at getting my first job. So indeed, I studied product design, and I fell off the product design sort of mantle or platform into service design. So that's been my journey. And maybe coming back full circle, indeed, with coming back to circularity and circular design to use my product design knowledge in that space as well.
It's a great,
So,
great
looking forward to
combination, right?
today's session.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool. I mean, and we also here, the three of us, because you've created a thing, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that. And this is, of course, BossUP. But before we jump into, and we'll talk a little bit more, we're going to do a bit of a demo play just to show people, because, and funny enough, and this is a true story, a couple of people have already reached out to me to find out what is this about, right? It's funny how some of these tools kind of tweak interest very soon. But the one thing I want to ask, and this is probably one of those table stake questions or basic questions, is that why a game? Why interaction like that? Why not a playbook or a tutorial or something like that? What kind of led, or for you both actually, Itziar, I want to include you in this question, is like, why do you think games is something that either puts people off or kind of draws people in? Itziar, if you can jump in first.
Yeah. I was thinking, like, do you want Bassam's answer first or mine? I really love games as opposed to the other formats, because they very immediately, like, you don't have to give a big explanation to people. You don't have to sell an idea. You don't have to have them read a lengthy book or do anything. They just like can show up and immediately start playing and understand the exact message that you want to convey at the end of playing. And also at the same time, it's like fun, which is something that kind of it seems at odds with the world of work, but it shouldn't be. And it relaxes everybody, puts everybody suddenly in, like, almost like in a child mode, and then you can start like doing whatever you want to do with that game. You can react in any way to the prompts, and you can reflect later what is the meaning of that, or how you could, for example, something that you discovered through the game, how you can take that back to your daily practice.
Totally.
So if you discovered, for example, through BossUP, that you could be more risky or have more appetite for risk,
Like
or
a simulation, right? In a way.
yeah, it's a simulation where you, like when we were kids, we were simulating our adult lives. That's how you learn. And then you can actually enact that in reality. So games help a lot in organizational settings or any kind of settings to just like kind of prototype how you want to behave later on.
Great. And Bassam, like I mean, I know less of your background. Like, is games something that comes up, jumps in the radar for you a lot? How do you feel about the idea?
Well, for me personally, actually, I would say I'm not a natural born games person. In fact, as a kid, just as when electronic games or computer games were sort of becoming, quite big, and I did have a computer, but I always found that I enjoyed doing, the other creative things like music or art on my computer than actually playing games, probably to the relief of my parents. But so this is not my natural go-to, but I have to say, when we as a team at Chemistry developed BossUP and we saw how people were using it, we saw how it changed the dynamic, and I think it's you captured kind of the essence of really why games. So I won't repeat that, but really to see how it creates essentially a safe and a different environment for people to, especially in the workplace, to act differently, to think differently, and to speak differently. I think that's to me been the biggest sort of wow takeaway of seeing BossUP in action. And absolutely, it makes a big contrast. It's fun. At the end of the day, it's going to be any game is going to be way better than death by PowerPoint in a typical corporate meeting room or boardroom.
Totally. And one thing that I think we touched on this when we spoke the first time is that the other concept of bringing something more interactive into building scenarios and having gameplay, for lack of another word, is that you're also shifting the perspective or the I want, lack of another better word, stress, because what happens is that the focus is on the tokens and the rules and the play. It's not Werner has got a stupid idea or Werner messed up. There's a focus on kind of the construct that you've put together, right, in the form of a game. Cool. So I just want to I want to jump straight into the topic at hand. And before we go into more depth, I want to touch a little bit on the creation of BossUP. I mean, at some point, Bassam, as you pointed out, you're not the biggest gamer in the world. This kind of came up. Was it a spark of inspiration? Was it through clients? Like, where did this concept of BossUP as a game come from?
So to put the bit of backstory and context to where this came from, indeed, it was a team effort from our team, sort of putting our heads together and ideas together and experience together. The trigger for it, I think, came from actually sort of quite a tangential space where we had a client in the mobility and sort of essentially ride-sharing business, and they were scaling up. They were growing at a very fast rate, and approached us to actually look at how do we onboard people in an effective way. And that was kind of a very unexpected sort of angle from where we BossUP came from. And so we developed, instead of again coming up with your 7 rules of service experience or onboarding or staff directives and so on. So, well, how can we make this more fun? How can we make it easier to learn and digest the corporate values? Who you are, what's your role in the organization? So we embodied some of those ideas into into a card game with a rule set, and we mocked it up. Now, as it happens with some pitch ideas, and especially with scale-ups who are kind of moving at 1 million miles an hour, things change, and that particular track didn't happen. But we had developed the work on it and the thinking and the concept so far that we thought, well, we're not going to throw this away. It would be a shame. And what can we do to take ownership of it and convert it into something that other people can use and benefit from? So the content obviously changed a little bit, but that kind of energy that went into develop the initial idea and the concept carried on. And we found that, interestingly, and you'll see later, that the first edition was all about tackling large organizational challenges. And after sort of that 20 years or maybe at that time 15 years of experience dealing with clients, it was sort of a bit of a brain dump of everything that we had experienced working with clients, of all shapes and sizes. And we quickly sort of were able to put together both the content on the challenges that you face, but also some of the triggers and solutions that's embodied in the content of the card. So that's a little bit of the backstory of how it came about. And it was really nice to test it with lots of people before we actually sort of made the final print edition that you see today.
Yeah. And how many iterations did you go through in the beginning? Like, did you do a lot of test plays?
We did do a lot of test plays. We first launched it at the Singapore Design Week, so we had a chance to invite people to, and we had other games as well. So we had sort of just fun, more physical games. But this was there, and our eyes and focus was, how well that would be received, and people really liked it. So I think, barring some changes, to the copy and adding some cards here and there, it didn't change radically. So we sort of landed on something that worked really well. And I think it was just this innate element of having gone through that experience ourselves that made it possible to sort of hit the mark with the idea in the first place.
Great stuff. Itziar, any reflections from your side? Like, I don't know if you've, I think you've used BossUP, right? But like, from a like building something like this perspective, I mean, we both worked on my little card deck thanks to your help. Is like the whole, like the initial construct and putting things together is always a bit of a like, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? Like, what is your reflection on that?
Well, first thing I wanted to say that I don't know how many years after you completed BossUP I got to know it, Bassam, but I remember that Bassam came to Barcelona for Service Design Days, and then a few days later he hosted this workshop or this like presentation somewhere else in a space in Barcelona, and there they made everybody play BossUP. And it was really fun. I really loved the game at the time because it was like it really, when he said that it's based on the experience with organizations. I've also worked in many different types of organizations or with many different types of organizations, and I could see a lot of the challenges reflected. And later on, when we work, I think the viewers are also going to like feel like, oh yeah, definitely this happened to me before.
Yeah.
And what I like about it also is that it has a little bit of an irony over all these things, that when they happen to you, and especially as an agency, or even I was thinking especially as an agency, because there's a lot of kind of a danger when one of these things shows up. But in fact, as an in-house team designer, it also is like it can be really frustrating, some of the challenges that you find here, and taking it with the irony, it's great.
Yeah, there's definitely a bunch of fun into this as well, right? But I wonder if it doesn't make sense for me to throw on my camera, and hopefully it's going to work, and then we kind of talk through it, because I think I've skirted around what it is, and then we talk through like the different concepts, and maybe to start off with, as I set everything up here, like what is the actual like idea behind BossUP? Like when I'm talking now, is like there's a and we'll get into the alternative uses in a second, but there's a overarching concept, and also like how does it relate to being the boss, bossing up? If you can just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think something that Itziar touched on at the very beginning. So with games, it doesn't need a lot of instructions. At least this game was designed in such a way that it is very easy to quickly understand. It's very quick to play, one round, so it doesn't come with a lot of overhead, right? So it's very easy to just plug it into, the start of a meeting, or, as part of a creative workshop. And in that way, it makes it very accessible. And I think the thing that we landed, we didn't have a premeditated sort of definition of where the game should be played, or how it should be played when we created it. But I think through the actual usage and playing it with other people and in different scenarios, I think as a sort of light icebreaker warm-up kind of format, that's really works very well. It's very successful, I think, in that context. So even if you're kind of walking in to a serious meeting with a team to discuss a particular challenge or an issue, just setting the pace with a round of BossUP is always a nice way to start things off.
Good stuff. And I think let's jump into the crux here. And I don't want to talk over here because there's basically three categories of cards that you have, right? Yeah. So the first one that I have here, and maybe I should start at the beginning, is that you have the challenge cards, right? And I'm going to try and lift it up. Looks like it's, so you get a
so there's a whole range of challenges, and that's really what sets each. As you've probably already guessed, then we've since developed a few different editions, but primarily this aspect of how do you solve problems, and in this case, how do you address large-scale organizational challenges. So there's quite a thick and rich collection of different topics. So it's also something that even with quite a few rounds of playing the game, you're not going to repeat quite a lot of these things until quite much further down the line if you play it a lot.
You can see this, and there's some tongue-in-cheek ones as well. Coffee's
yeah, so that's something we also deliberately developed, I think, over time, is a sort of just to lighten the mood as well, because it can get quite heavy depending on the challenge. So it's sprinkled with some of the things that are relevant but presented in a bit of a quirky way, like this card that you're holding at the moment, Abandoned Ship. but some are also just literally downright silly. And I think one of my favorites is, and there's one I think that talks about people showing up late because they're watching football late at night. And I think that was something that was literally happening when we were developing the game. It was the World Cup, I think somewhere in Europe, which meant that, the best games were, 7, 8 o'clock in the evening European time, which meant that you have to get up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And you constantly see people who are sort of, looking half asleep or literally asleep at work because they stayed up the night before watching the game. So that's in there as well.
First world problems. How did you come up with all these ideas? Were you just kind of like spitballing it and mixing it up with the team, or?
Yeah, I mean, we're a creative team, so that's, we just sat down and as I said, a lot of it was a brain dump from everybody in the team, based on our lived experience, as consultants and working with different companies, and then we riffed off each other as well and just added onto them.
And it's nice.
And I think we had to stop at one point because that deck of challenges was getting pretty thick.
Yeah.
As well, there you go. So yeah.
Yeah, that was my curiosity. Did you discard any of them, or did you just like keep them all?
No, I think I can't remember now. It's been a while, but I'm sure we did. We went through some filtering process. But as you can see, we leaned on the side of more, not less.
Yeah. And I guess, and we'll talk about the other additions in a second. Is that, I mean, this can also be kind of, I mean, you guys could adjust it, or you can adjust this gameplay for whatever. I mean, this is quite broad, this one here that I've gone through, but you could make it more specific or brand it into something else.
Yeah. So what works really well actually is if you are, let's say, a team within an organization, or at least, one particular organization. It's a bit more difficult when you have just a random mix of people from different walks of life, because, you obviously you need a bit of a context. So often the question will come up, well, what is the objective, or who are we, or what are we trying to achieve?
Yeah.
Now, if you are part of the same team or part of the same company, then that question is answered by default, and it becomes a lot easier. So that's a very effective space to play the game. If you do come together with a group of friends, or just random people, showing up at a cafe like we've played it in different times, you can choose a context as well. It's like, okay, we want to be this type of organization or this type of team. And I think what you've picked up just there as well, when there's some blank cards as well.
Yeah.
So you can have an opportunity to, either spontaneously or preemptively prior to the session, both the challenge cards and the trigger cards have blanks where you can also fill in and customize it somewhat to your needs.
Because I suspect, I don't know if you would recommend this, but some of the cards that I've reviewed before is that, let's say you want to play more of a serious kind of approach, is that you could potentially go through the challenge cards. The first, we'll get into the triggers in a second. We can go through here and kind of like discard some of the things you don't want to use for that play, right? So you could shape the game a little bit, and then also, like you mentioned, you have the empty cards where you can actually add your own challenges in as well, right?
Yeah, and you can even take that. I mean, maybe jumping a bit to other applications of BossUP, you could take that to the more extreme level of even replacing all the, let's say, challenge cards. I think you'll find ones that are very relevant and quite, let's say, common, and sad to say evergreen, so they keep coming back. But you could, let's say, in theory, have a completely unique set of challenge cards that you want to activate the team, or indeed a filtered, curated version of or selection of those challenge cards as well.
Gotcha. Any reflection there, Itziar? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think you wanted to say something earlier and I rudely cut you off.
I did, but I don't remember anymore. So yeah.
It's all good. It's all good. Let's flow. Then, so we have the challenge cards over here. And then another aspect, or one of the kind of, to make this work, you have what you guys have labeled the trigger cards, right? And there's a set of them. I think they're slightly less than the challenge cards, but they also have this kind of like, can you talk a little bit, what do you mean by trigger, Bassam?
Right. So do you want to go into a bit of the gameplay process here, Werner? Maybe it makes sense to introduce that.
Yeah.
Just
I
very
mean, dip
briefly,
into
yeah.
it. And we'll do a demo game after we've gone through the cards, but I think
Yeah.
it's maybe a good idea to talk through the actual rules, because now you have the challenge cards and now the trigger. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. And
Please
I
go
think
ahead.
maybe to answer the earlier question that you asked me of the name BossUP. So the idea is that one person, so this can be played in a group of 3 to 5. And one person takes on the role of, say, the lead, and we call it the innovation director, or the boss, right? So they're in charge of selecting the challenge. And typically we played it that you pick 3 cards at random from the deck, you put them on the table for everyone to see, and generally you would pick one. So you choose the challenge, you would put that forward for the rest of the team. Now, every other player around the table will have had 5 trigger cards handed out.
Procurement
Okay.
is a nightmare. That's an evergreen
So
one.
Oh, see, this is
And I have very good procurement friends. I hope they're not
see.
watching.
So everybody keeps their own trigger cards to themselves. They don't share what trigger cards they have in their hand. And the idea is very simple. Basically, you choose when your turn comes around one of these trigger cards as an inspiration to solve that problem, right? Now, what you can see here, and I think this is a very good example as well. So the idea is that this is not the actual answer, right? It's a trigger. So the idea is that it helps to inspire you to proposition a certain way or certain solution, certain idea that is sort of sitting on top of or triggered by this card that you've just put on the table.
And I can, because I see my camera is quite bright on the card here, I can quickly read the magic wand. So the little text that you guys have added here along with the icon is like, make everything go away with one stroke. That's not a.
So
that
sets you off in a certain sort of thought direction. So this is exactly where the contextualization to your work area, your specific area of expertise, or the type of organization that you work for. What would make things with that one wave of a magic wand, metaphorically speaking, go away? And this card is particularly interesting because what you see indeed here is a sprinkling again of some very literal triggers, like organize a hackathon, and some very far out things like magic wand.
Yeah.
And that also challenges people around the table to how do you deal with that ambiguity as well? Like what is a magic wand? How is this getting silly or unreal? But it opens up the opportunity to then expand that thinking and think differently, think in an alternative way, think in a bit of a silly and quirky way even. And that's, I think, what is really valuable about this, because you come out of, even if you produce complete nonsense, having fun playing this, your whole energy and mindset and mind frame coming out of it then to discuss the actual thing that you came together for in that meeting is going to be completely different.
Yeah. And also there's kind of a bit of I just thought of it now as a little bit of a trick too, right? Because I just drew one card that always, like, it's a design thinking card, right? And I remember distinctly a time several years ago where a lot of people were saying, we have a lot of problems in business, we should do design thinking. But design thinking what? And I think this is exactly what you just described. It's like, okay, so magic wand what? Like, what are you trying to sell here? And then what happens after that? So you get to pitch, because I guess you have the innovation director who has this challenge card, and then you have to kind of come up with a solution against this trigger or lens that you have.
Yeah. So then it comes back once you've gone around the table, it comes back to the innovation director to sort of choose a winner. And then in a sort of similar spirit, they themselves have to also then put forward why they chose, one winner over some of the other propositions. So they come back, and here, the rules are a bit open. There's nothing stopping people from, the other players from, say, challenging that perspective and seeing if they can sort of, help to change the mind of the innovation director who's making the final call. But there is an element of taking charge in decision making here as well. So then you see that duality of, there's this perspective or role that you play where you're pitching ideas, you may be being a bit whimsical and out of the box. And then there's another role where, you know, you're having to make a decision and have to rationalize that and activate and get people on board as well. And specifically then, the role of the innovation director rotates, right? So with every round, it moves to the next person.
Yeah.
So that everybody gets, you know, if you do a full round with every least once that role of innovation director.
Great. And the thing is also, like, it just comes back to what I said at the beginning, is like it does really start to play into your ability to, I hate using the word, but to sell, to convince people that your idea is good. Because in an organization, it's not always the best ideas that actually gets funded or gets pushed through into the business, right? There's a lot of constraints and things that gets taken into account. And I think that kind of getting people convincing the innovation director that this is a good idea is also kind of subtly getting brought into through the gameplay.
Absolutely.
Then there's a couple of extra cards lying here on the desk that we haven't spoken about yet, because there's actually a third level to this. So you've done the pitch, or everybody's that isn't the innovation director is now pitched. And then what do we do with these?
So this is the crucial bit. It's the money cards. So everybody gets a set of money cards to pitch with, to fund with. And we've also added a little bit of a complicated but useful rule here, which you know you can change if you like. But the idea is that you shuffle the cards and you turn them over, and then you only get to choose to fund the winning project. You take the top two cards, and that's basically your bandwidth, your choice. And that's the kind of mirroring a bit of kind of real life where you know you don't necessarily have access to your whole budget. So then you have to make a choice. Okay, is this? I think it's a 5 and a 3, and then it's up to you, depending on how convinced you are of your fellow player, or fellow winner, of their pitch and their idea. You can choose to fund with that 3 or that 5, right?
And
now that's not revealed as well.
Because
during the gameplay, but at the very end. So let's say you've done that full game round. Everybody's gone around the table. You've collected a number of winning ideas that sit next to each winner. And then everybody does a tally up. So you add up, you know, the score for each idea, and obviously the highest funded idea wins. But then there's another subtle nuance added to it, that it's also a joint win with the highest funder as well. So in this case, the orange color, let's say, would have been, you know,
in this case, this is 1, 1, 1, 1, and 3.
Yeah. So whoever played the 3 would be, let's say, your winning partner as someone who invested the most in your particular idea. So there's also that, indeed, investment dynamic, and who puts down the most money behind something.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little bit of a Dragon's Den vibe coming into play as well, right?
It's a kind of post Dragon's Den, if you like.
Yeah. Let me just bring myself back on screen here. There we go.
One thing that I always thought when I played is that on one side it is like it's very clearly a game, and you need to like play to get the most money. But on the other hand, also in reality in organizations, sometimes you're not in a position to go for the biggest fund idea. So it is also interesting when, like, I think it would be interesting also to have these other possibilities. Like, how do I get an idea funded at all? Like, do I have to go for the biggest funding possible, or should I go for something that is more modest, but that will get me started with these? And I know it doesn't go well with games, and here, of course, the winner is the one who takes the most money back home. But sometimes it is interesting how in the reality of organizations, sometimes you just want to get some money to get things started.
Yeah, and I guess, Itziar, if I understand you correctly with what you're saying, is that you're kind of bringing in your own context. Because, for example, to explain what I'm thinking is that as I was messing around with the cards to prepare for this, is that I started thinking about ideas for certain things, but then I caught myself going, oh, for my current employer, we don't have money to do this, like all the funds are frozen, right? Then all of a sudden I'm kind of constraining my own idea. I'm not changing the challenge or the trigger. I'm just thinking about the trigger differently. Also, like I work with a few Swiss German people, and they're very tough. So I also have to think about what I say to them when I do the pitch, right? So that kind of subconsciously also comes into play. It's not just about having a free fall and coming up with magical ideas to just convince the innovation director. And I guess the innovation director, Bassam, also gets influenced by the constraints inside the business. It's not just the person pitching.
Okay.
Well, that exactly. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier, that they have to put forward a let's say, analysis of why they made that choice. And that has to be convincing as well. It has to get the other team on board, or the rest of the team on board with their thought process and their decision-making process.
Bassam, I wanna jump into a quick demo play because I feel like I wanna show Itziar like who's the real genius in this live stream. But the thing is, before we do that, I just want to make sure we've covered most of the topics around BossUP as well, because the one thing we haven't touched on is that there's also other versions. Because when I started looking at the review and whatever, there was 2 other versions that popped up. Is there more? Like, can you just talk about that for a second and how they differ from this kind of innovation play?
So obviously with it being quite fun and successful, and maybe we got maybe a little bit bored playing the classic version, if you like. So we inevitably started to think, well, how would you focus the content to kind of address specific organizations or more specific sort of professions or areas. And in fact, this idea actually came about during COVID. So we thought, why could we make the COVID edition, which I think was seen more as a bit of a stress release as people were sort of, as we were all in lockdown, and could you have some pretty silly and crazy car just to let off some steam. We never printed that one because I think by the time we got it all organized, we played it casually, but not to the point where it had a shelf life, and luckily it did. Nobody wanted to
grateful for
that process forever. But that triggered that process of, well, what other editions could we have? And as I mentioned earlier, this was a time that that more focused content around circularity is also professionally vetted and well placed. So then you see here, this is the circular edition versus the what used to be the original BossUP here. And shortly after that, we then partnered up with the Singapore Institute of Technology, who do a lot of work also in innovation, but also in healthcare. And then we developed the healthcare edition. So subtly different colors, if you can see that on screen.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, as you go into kind of these more, maybe they're by nature sort of heavier topics, they are a little bit less fun. It's hard to laugh around, the destruction of the planet or somebody's health, but equally useful, I think, particularly the circular economy edition. We had feedback where people said, I've been trying so hard to start this conversation within my organization, and I really couldn't find a way to open up the discussion without people feeling resistance or questioning that or not knowing where to start. And this gave them kind of a platform to just open up that conversation.
Yeah, it's quite interesting when you told me about it the first time, because I reviewed a card deck a long time ago, but it wasn't like this was more an informational card deck around the circular economy, where they had a framework and they tried to, this was a bit more academic, explaining certain concepts, which I can see a use for, where the gameplay starts becoming interesting because people actually get to learn and interact with the concept rather than trying to do homework or academics around it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of takes away that it is a serious topic, but yeah, it's a bit of a paradox. You want to also take away the tension that's built into a topic like that and just start the conversation somewhere.
Good stuff. And Itziar, anything from your side? Because I want to jump into the gameplay, but I want to make sure I haven't skipped any of our topics.
I think we can jump into
rock and roll. Are you ready, Itziar? I don't know if you're ready.
Probably not. I think you're much better at pitching than me, but I will
No. It's been a while. So let's bring up the cards. I'd like to introduce Bassam Jabry as the innovation director and fundamentally now the boss of this live stream. And as you explained, and Bassam, by all means, like if you can talk through it again, there's 3 cards on the screen.
Yep. So we have 3 cards, revolving doors. So that's, I think, something that we typically see in a lot of organizations. So constant change, especially maybe at management level, both in terms of personnel but also decision making. The all-time forever problem, which is all I see are silos. So I think that's always going to be inherent in this tension between we need people to specialize and be experts in their own field, and at the same time we require people to kind of work together and build bridges across those silos. Very difficult. It's always nice to look back. I mean, this was largely developed around sort of 2018, 2019 period, to see how automation was definitely a topic back then. But if you put it in the context of today and with AI, it has a whole new level of meaning as well. So no need to explain, this one.
Yeah.
Am I being replaced by a robot or maybe an AI or an AI robot and all 3 combinations? Yeah.
Great.
So that's what's on the table. To move things along, I'm going to pick the classic, I guess. So all I see are silos.
Good stuff.
And we'll go around the virtual table here, and actually this is the first played it online, but this is fun to do it with the actual physical cards as well.
Yeah. I think that's a trick, like really trying to figure out what to do with the cards. So Itziar, this is and technically, like in the actual game, we won't be seeing Itziar's cards. Like she'll be keeping it very close to herself. But Itziar, if you look at your hand here, I think you've got some magical things happening.
I do think that there's a lot of possibilities. And well, first I wanted to say that I love that you picked this challenge about the silos, because as a person working in customer journey management, CX, service design, like silos are one big thing that we always encounter, and that somehow they're very related with how we need to work to kind of bridge those silos in order for the experience to improve at all. But if we go through my cards, we have a lot of possibilities here. I'm going to start with what I think about the holy hand grenade. I think this one, don't know, but to me sounds a bit like, okay, the CEO actually has decided to restructure the organization and take out the silos, or at least some of the silos, and reshape completely the organizational boundaries. What I like about it is that it might actually do it can completely remove the silos. This is the top-down approach. But I think it's also a bit tricky, because I've seen these in multiple. I was thinking about this in multiple of the organizations where I've seen those restructurings, and some of them, they have been great because they actually, I don't know, I remember one organization even created a whole new department based on research that I did for them. And sometimes these can feel really meaningful, and it's an investment. But very often it is a time of a great stress for the people involved.
Yeah. So
I think, and in the end, you need to create new silos, because not everything can depend from the CEO. So you need to reproduce some of those departments. So sometimes these can be good, or sometimes it can be really tricky, and you just go back to the silos. Then I really like the Tinder one as a kind of the opposite approach, because it makes me think about matching strangers in the organization. about, I mean, not so much for what people go into dinner for, but to really like one of the things that I see about these silos is that when you're working on anything, let's say, for example, improving a journey, a lot of time those silos, you can see them in the room represented as conflicts. But if you could actually make through this Tinder in our organization, make all of these people get to know each other on a personal level and do something fun like playing BossUP or like something else that develops a connection, then possibly those conflicts would be a little bit different when they are like in the moment of working or
Yeah.
like scenifying those conflicts. But I think it would be kind of like a very slow moving type of approach, and also it's very organic, very human, contrary to the other one that was like thinking about the organization like a machine and how do we oil this machine better. This one is a very organic approach, but the thing with organic approaches is that you never know when they finish or where they lead you to. So these like new personal connections that they develop, they can go well, or they can make them even have more conflicts than before. So I think I'm gonna like park it there too.
Okay.
We have, for example, the purge, and the purge makes me think about one thing that I've observed in organizations, and I don't know if you guys think it's common as well, that a lot of the strategies, they kind of stop at middle management.
Yeah.
Like have this new strategy coming top down to the organization, and then suddenly the middle managers just stop them. Like everybody else kind of like the top management adopts the language, but then that's all they do. And then the middle managers look at this as like, okay, new strategic cycle, that's the new language. I'm going to use the language, but I'm going to keep doing whatever I do. And the purge suggests me, okay, why don't we get rid of all the middle managers and we flatten the organization? And then those silos are going to be a little bit different. But what I don't like about it is that I don't think it's the middle manager's fault. So to say, I think they are just reacting to the fact that their incentives are still the same.
Yeah.
And that's why instead of playing the purge, I'm thinking about using the force. And
Okay.
I'm interpreting this card as something related, for example, with your KPIs and incentives. So if we change the KPIs and incentives, you don't need to undo the boundaries. You just need to create, for example, new KPIs or new incentives that are actually making those two teams that are currently siloed and never collaborate in order to get a new result that they can only get together or in collaboration. So I think this one is one of my finalists.
Great.
And then we have also the skunk works.
Oh yeah, I nearly forgot about that
the
one, right?
skunk works. Yeah. So the skunk works, of course, it made me think about my own like pet topic in professional life right now, that is customer journey management, and it made me think that that is working with the different people in the organization and trying to align them towards the journeys of customers, and doing it not as a one-off exercise but permanently. So makes me think that this is the skunk team that might be actually kind of bridging those silos. So these are my two top cards, and I mean they're very related.
Yeah.
Because journey management are full of KPIs, and probably you need to create some new KPIs, otherwise you just have conflicting KPIs and conflicting, like even if you put them on a journey, you just like keep them there. And that's the reason why I'm going to go with use the force. And I'm going to go with let's create, don't know exactly which, but let's create a series of very targeted new KPIs and incentives that go with them that will bridge and make different silos understand why they are all working towards the same objectives and how to best align their work towards these new KPIs.
Awesome.
And that's my pitch.
I wish I had background clapping sound, but I forgot to do that. Thank you, Itziar.
I'll clap for you too.
No, I have to.
Werner, for you, going after Itziar it just makes your life tougher, I'm afraid. So,
You
gotta
I should
level
have,
that one up.
I should have thought about this before I did the whole plan. Ladies first, didn't work for me here. But let me just. But also, of course, I actually have a reflection on what Itziar just did, but we can talk about it later. The one thing is that in the normal gameplay, you will take one, and I asked Itziar to actually go through all the cards, so to show how you can actually interpret all the cards related to the actual challenge. So the cards that I got drawn was I'm not going to go through all of them in detail, as I've got corporate restructuring. That one scares me a little bit. I have PTSD, so I'm gonna skip that one. Staff rotation, which is always interesting because kind of rotating badges out, you can walk in someone else's shoes, which is always a good thing that can work to break down silos. And I skip that one. Random act of God scared me, so I thought I have to work on that one. But let me look at the other ones. I have renovate the office, and I thought first thought that came into mind is that if I want to break down silos, allow people to create their own space together, right? So sometimes we want to instill things like if I create a space with people who aren't in my team, so that we can create a little nest for ourselves together. That could be an interesting way to break down silos. Oops, wrong one, that one. But I'm going to skip that one too. And then, of course, because I've done many workshops in my life, I just skip that one because I know a lot of my current people that I work with, they get scared when they hear workshop because they think, oh no, we're going to be in Fig Jam. Nothing against Fig Jam. Scares me a little bit too. So I'm going to go with random act of God. And my concept there is, it made me think about my lovely wife, Marta. Now, Itziar, you know Marta. First of all, the reason the act of God, random act of God card, first, is it something magical that happens? I really had to really think hard about this one. But then I realized that the random act of God can be a really good thing that is unexpected. So in the case of my lovely wife, I sometimes are I don't look like a guy who stresses, but I get a bit of stress. I worry about things. And then all of a sudden, if you live with an Eastern European lady, they make the best sandwiches. And then this sandwich just appears the right time and the right place. And I'm going like, I can't believe that she actually thought of me and she brought me this sandwich. And she will probably kill me if she hears the story. And I thought, how could that be related back? She's awesome. How can I relate that back to business? And I thought about my time at my current organization is that there's a lot of silo teams. And the thing is, I understand the concept that I have to have empathy for what they're going through. So that's the first step. So maybe doing a little bit of a pilot program where we secretly go and we really look at what this specific team is doing and what they are struggling with. So we get a better, deeper understanding. And then proactively try and help them. I mean, of course, there's a bit of a trick because you don't want to step in someone's, upset them by doing their job. But perhaps it's by reducing, the amount of tickets they have to deal with by us just doing some extra work or implementing another process on our side that brings the list of tickets down. I'm just using tickets as an example. But really, as one team going out to see if you can proactively bring them a small sandwich to help them, right? And you pilot that at the beginning, maybe see if you can scale it later on. And then let's say at the end of the month, they see, hey, I have much less in my inbox. Why did it happen? Oh, Werner and his team kind of worked on that in the background for you guys. There's a bit of a reveal. So that is my idea. And just to reflect that, we had the use the force, and then of course the all I see is silos is the actual challenge. And this is how myself and Itziar tried to answer that. So Mr. Innovation Director, reflection from your side.
Remember that mine is
It's
the high approach. It's like you just like use the metric and change happens magically.
Okay, so I'm going to eat my words now because I've got a very tough challenge on my hands with the two of you. I think being so amazingly eloquent and thoughtful with your ideas. While my brain is racing sort of in the background, maybe just to buy myself another 30 seconds, I thought it was worth mentioning as well how you both used, the more, let's say, out there, whimsical or random cards, and allowed you to really expand your thinking and bring sort of the depth of your experience and knowledge forward. And I'm curious, let's say, maybe to Itziar, a question to you that if you saw yourself in this as a real life scenario at work, would that have helped you to sort of broach the topic of what you proposed with the card of using the force? Is that something that that would have delivered it in a gentler and more open-minded way, maybe?
I think so, and in the current organization where I work, actually, the use the force card would have been from a different silo. So I would have probably avoided these kind of solution, or to propose this kind of solution, because it's from the neighboring team. And in fact, by actually playing, I could just get rid of this weight on my shoulders that, oh, I'm actually favoring somebody else's team and not mine. So it's already broke some silos.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a fun also exercise to try to consider, okay, what does this card mean? But I think also we did the little trick of knowing the cards ahead. But I think when you're playing quickly, it might not be as reflective as what we need. And I think maybe it is something that when you're playing BossUP, it's interesting to give people a little bit more time to think exactly what cards do they have and how could they best play them.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Great. So I think the two of you, we're definitely very, very close, I think, in both putting very powerful and effective ideas. But sorry, Werner, I think I'm just leaning that a little bit towards Itziar's direction. And let me explain it.
Please do, yeah, because otherwise it will be challenged.
This is cool though. Like, I mean,
are we out of time yet? Do I have to...
No. I mean, so I can cut the stream off right now.
We talked about this. So this. So I think again we talked about how at the beginning, how does the innovation or the boss sort of comes in with, do they present something that's really, flying by the seat of your pants and really going for it, being wild, or being kind of very pragmatic and grounded in constraints. So I think what I liked with how you pitched it, Itziar, is that it is quite, you chose quite an abstract card. It's still quite a sort of out there idea, but it's very much founded and grounded in, a deep understanding of people's behavior and empathy and how to sort of practically change the system as well in something that would work, especially how you contrasted it with why you kicked out, the other cards. So you revealed a little bit of your back process in how you thought through that. So that's my explanation for what it's worth. But both, I think, very, very good pitches, and I think both actually worthy of being tested and tried if this was part of the discussion as well.
And now in the next step, we both, and by both I mean Bassam and me, want to test one of Martha's sandwiches.
Yes, please, you're all invited.
For sure.
She is definitely the best. I'm always a winner in her eyes, I think. Great. So Bassam, just to kind of finish up the gameplay here. I mean, now Itziar is the winner of the pitches, and then now what happens is, Bassam, you and me both have to invest in Itziar's idea, and then what happens is Itziar gets both the cards that's currently on the screen, the silos, and then also the investment. She doesn't get to see it yet, but I guess we can reveal it, and I'll give her the highest one that I drew, like, because I drew 2 from my cards, and she's got 5 coins because I want to stay in her good books.
Yeah. So if you recall, you draw, you shuffle the cards and choose from the top 2.
Yep.
So I got a 1 and a 4, and I think 1 is a bit too little, so I'm gonna put forward the 4. So
not too
yeah,
bad.
4 and a 5.
Yeah.
That's a really. I, by the way, don't think that maybe I don't need so much money for this. Well, I mean, we needed to hire a very good consultant to help us develop those new metrics, and then of course we need to communicate them and start measuring them. So that's a bit of money. So maybe I can do with the 5, and I can leave the 4 to Bernard too.
There's even the reflection around the funding. Thank you. So we can fund both projects. Great. It's a win-win. Everybody wins. I think just on the reflection side, we kind of started touching on it. One thing that made me think a little bit around, there's 2 things. The one thing is that what I got stuck on a little bit, and not in a bad way, was I immediately started thinking about that I have to pitch to you, Bassam. And I know you're a very salted agency. You've been in the industry, and the first thing I'm going is like, I was thinking of the leadership story deck. Like, how do I pitch? How do I build the story? Like, how can I get you to relate to my story? So, I mean, I didn't spend hours on it, but the thing is, I really started thinking about what does the pitch look like? And I think, I mean, even in the game itself, there's a bit more of a high speed going on if you play it that way. But even the delivery of the pitch becomes important, which I think is kind of interesting.
For sure, and then one other aspect as well. Don't forget that as you go around the table, that role is shifting from one player to the next. And to build on your point, who's in charge at any one point, and you can find that. Let's say I could be, if you have a mixed team with different hierarchies, I could be the intern pitching, or I could be the boss pitching my idea to the intern, who happens to be the innovation director at that point in time, and as you go around the table. So that's kind of very interesting dynamics at play here as well.
Makes sense. Any reflection from your side, Itziar?
I think what is interesting is also that because, like, what I was thinking is about how the pitching became more of a translation of the card, and it normally is not that. So when you're preparing pitches, you're really like trying to go and like hang them from the organizational strategy, go back to the 3 previous slides that somebody at the top shared, and make a very coherent story. And I really loved how your story, for example, went to Martha's sandwich instead of doing all of that. And I thought that it made the pitch very personal. It made it very, like, much more interesting to hear.
Good
For
reflection.
sure, I think he had me there on the sandwich.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to bring in a sandwich. Thank you, guys. Other thing, Bassam, and this is a bit of a completely side note, because on the website itself, when I was kind of deep diving this, there was a where do you use this? And we touch on everything here: gameplay, innovation, pitching, icebreaker. Then you guys actually state this, is that you can use this in interviews. And I wanted to ask you about it in the stream, but then as Itziar was talking through her trigger cards, a light started going on for me, because if I had to take that space and let's say I dropped away the challenge. Oh, I mean, the challenge is silos, right? And I listened to what Itziar was talking through the different trigger cards. I started to kind of build a picture of some of the challenges that she's facing. So I kind of see where it can be used in interviews. So there's a bit of an alternative use. Am I throwing a curveball at you, or did you?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is something that we also, again, identified that it's a great way, whether, let's say, an interview is for new candidates, or even just to sort of, what we do sometimes walking into an organization is if we have people from across different departments, or even one sort of expansion of how you play it is you can have individual players as groups, right? So you can have teams of 2 or 3 or 4 per person, or per entity, who represent different departments, and that's really good one to build on the silo story. So you can have finance next to HR, next to marketing, next to innovation, so on, and they have to deliberate amongst themselves and come back with a pitch, and then you can start to see the kind of different personalities, mind frames, and attitudes across those different teams or different people. So it's also a great way to gauge where people are at. And again, going right back to where we started off with, because games create that safe space where people feel more of a freedom or a license to sort of speak their mind, then you're really kind of getting a bit under the hood of what are they thinking, and how does their mind work.
Total sense. Guys, I'm about ready to wrap this up. I think we've covered a lot of topics, and as professional as I am, I wanted to ask you, is there anything that I've missed that we haven't covered? Itziar, there's something specifically also that I wanted to ask you, though, because at the beginning we spoke a little bit about this journey management course that you're running at the moment. Do you want to just say 1 or 2 words about that?
Just like, if anyone's interested, there's actually 2 courses. There's the advanced course that starts this week, and it's the 1st edition. And there's the essentials course that it's the 2nd edition already. We had a 1st edition in the fall. And both of them, you can find them in the Service Design College. That is an online school for service designers by service designers. So kind of like a peer-to-peer education initiative. And I, of course, recommend people to go if they're interested in customer journey management. And yeah, that's all I have to say about it.
I'm wishing you all the best with that, Itziar. And Bassam, there's something important we nearly forgot, is that you and the team, and I'll promote it through because we're going to be, I'm publishing a review, independent review of this, some newsletters coming out and some more spamming everywhere, but good spamming, because I'm happy to also mention that you've gracefully said that you're willing to give 1 deck of BossUP cards, the new version, away for a lucky viewer. The way that we are going to do it is that I have a mailing list. Don't worry, I'm not going to spam anybody. You can unsubscribe, but if I'm correct, and I have to get the stamp from the boss here, is that where you go to my email list is at creativecoffeebreak.live. I'll publish and I have given some of the details in the chat already. And you sign up there, but there's a bit of a trick. You need to tell us, how would you use BossUP in your environment? What would you use BossUP for? Bassam, you happy with that? And then we'll do
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
We
always love to hear stories of how people are also using it, what experiences they had, and especially what wins they had. So looking forward to hearing how it's sort of inspired people to get hold of it and make use of it in their own organization as well.
Great. And once again, guys, I'm going to shut this down. Just once again, thanks for joining me here and for having fun with me. Like Itziar also, like I didn't give you credit for coming up with the idea to invite Bassam in here just to have a little bit of a play, which actually turned out really great. So, guys, have a good evening. I'm just going to quickly do the closing here. Once again, thanks for joining the Creative Coffee Break. My name is Werner Puchert, and as Bassam mentioned, is that we're going to give one of these away in the next couple of weeks. So we're going to do a lucky draw at the end of February. So the way that you enter the lucky draw is you go to this way my newsletter. You sign up there, you have a little question. It's like, how would you use BossUP? And what would you use it for with your team? And at the end of February, I will do a lucky draw and we will announce it in all the channels who's going to be the lucky winner. And thanks for the team, for Bassam, the crew in all over the world, Singapore, London, the Netherlands, for creating this awesome game, and also Itziar joining me in this live stream. So once again, thanks for watching, and catch you in the comments.